Welcome to the Mile High Podcast. This is your host, Dr. Daniel Knowles. Thank you for joining us for wherever in the world you're watching, listening. We're at the altitude 5,280 feet, Mile High territory, where we anticipate you being in September of 2024. Wherever you're watching or listening, make sure you hit subscribe, whether it be YouTube or Spotify or Apple, iTunes, so you never miss any Mile High tick. And of course, if you are choosing to Rise Up to Mile High Live, go up to riseuptomilehigh.com, and that's where you get all the information about the event. I am super thrilled. I'm really super excited for this particular edition, this episode with, well, not doctor yet, Allie Frick, student Allie Frick, this close to being doctor, Sherman College student, who is in her 12th quarter, who rose up to the Mile High stage and entered the speaker contest and was selected by our team for the student speaker. She found her passion for chiropractic while in her undergraduate program. She was studying exercise science and hoping to be a PT, a physical therapist. And like many people, somewhere along the way, she got inspired for chiropractic, and she was introduced by Dr. Rob Schiffman, who had spoken at Mile High before. So that's super exciting news, which I just found out. And she's the president of Zeta Phi Chi, which is a principal chiropractic sorority at Sherman's campus. And thank you so much for joining us today, Allie Frick.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure.
And first thing I got to ask, am I saying your name right?
You are.
Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure. And so thank you so much for being at Mile High, for speaking, for being on the podcast. And I want to start real quickly, let people get to know you a little bit. How did you find your way into chiropractic?
So that was a big part of what I spoke about at Mile High. But the way I found chiropractic, like you had said, I was in undergrad going to be a physical therapist. I was an athlete, so I liked that aspect of it. My dad started experiencing some symptoms, some sciatica, numbness and tingling in his hands and feet, which was very similar to what my grandmother experienced right when she was diagnosed with MS. So medical community told my dad they couldn't do much for him. And someone that worked for him got him to a chiropractor and explained to him that it was not about the pain, not about the numbness and tingling, but just about living life and living life at its fullest. And the chiropractor, Dr. Rob Schiffman, told my dad all about, innate intelligence, thoughts, traumas, toxins, subluxation. And before my dad had even been adjusted, he called me and said, there's something about this chiropractic thing you need to look into. And I did. And before I knew it, I was down at Sherman.
Wow, that's super exciting. So are you excited about this change of life direction?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I learned very quickly that chiropractic is more of a lifestyle and less of a profession. And that excited me a lot because I always wanted to be super passionate about my profession, and I just wasn't when I was going to school to be a physical therapist. And so I was super excited to get down to Sherman, and I could tell from the first time I ever visited that this was the perfect place for me. And so the transition from doing what I thought I wanted to do to what I actually should be doing was absolutely the best thing in the whole world.
And also grateful that you found Sherman, that he referred you to go to Sherman. I wish more doctors would tell people to go to a school that actually teaches chiropractic in it, which those numbers are dwindling. But also really that you got really a change in direction, not just profession, but also values by going into chiropractic.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I had only been adjusted a handful of times and had only gotten a little bit of time with Dr. Schiffman before I had gone to school. So I didn't have that principled mind quite yet, but all it took was going to philosophy class for us, like day one of school, and hearing Dr. Decken talk about worldview, and just thinking back to myself on that very first day, almost 3.5 years ago to now, like my mindset completely shifted. The way I live my life completely shifted. And it was something I never expected, but it was just what I needed.
Excellent. So then I'm curious how this hit. Did it hit as this is a healing profession, like this is what I thought healthcare would be, or would be compared to what you were thinking it was, or was it a completely radical thing? Sometimes people find chiropractic is like, oh, this is what I thought healthcare was.
Oh, absolutely. That was exactly how I was. You hear about from anyone, anytime you go to the doctor, oh, we're here to help you. We're here. This is the helping profession and we're here to heal and all of these things. And then I went to chiropractic school and I heard like the power that made the body healed the body. And I just had to like pause and think like, wait, but if that's the case, then why am I being put on all these medications? Why am I told to do all of these things? What about the foods we eat and all those chemicals that are in that? Are people really caring about the healing of the body if they're not allowing the body to do that?
Mm-hmm.
And so it was a very quick transition to figure out, it's not all that I thought it was, and it is so much more. And I'm grateful that I was able to find that.
Excellent. So what can you share about your experience deciding to enter the speaker contest, which you did outstanding, and I wish more people would enter. It's such a great opportunity. Sometimes we get tons of them, sometimes we get very few. What was the experience of like even considering to enter the speaker contest?
Yeah, so 2 years before I applied, a sorority sister of mine, now Dr. Sarah Dooley, but she was a student then, applied and was going to speak at Mile High. And I had never even heard of Mile High at that point. And so to watch her journey of applying and winning and going and speaking and doing amazing got me super excited. And I thought, I'm going to do that before I graduate. I want to be the student speaker. But of course, being in school, I made every excuse in the book of, it's never the right time. I have too many tests or classes or board exams or all the things. And then a year later, a good friend of mine, Brooke Mills, applied and won and also went on stage. And
Mm-hmm.
again, I just remembered, man, you told yourself you were going to get up there and you were going to do that. And you need to stop making excuses. So then when Mile High came around again, I saw a lot of posts about it and I thought, this is your last chance. So I had applied, and all I kept thinking the entire time of applying was that you're going to get up on stage in front of all of the docs that you're going to be, the type of doc you're going to be one day.
Mm-hmm.
And it was terrifying, but also so invigorating at the same time to know that you were going to stand on stage in front of all of these people and get to talk to the tick with the people who love to do that. And so quickly all my fear went away and I was very excited to apply. And then getting that phone call from you was just, it's indescribable. It was amazing. I was very excited.
Well, then how is it? How did it feel to be on stage?
Oh my gosh, it was awesome. I will say I walked on a stage and I walked off stage. I don't remember anything in between. I think I was just so excited. I was so excited and hyped up to get up there, because it lights your fire and fills your cup. And I think I'd shared this in my speech too, but I had taken a final like 24 hours before
Right,
I was
right.
on stage. And so it was like a quick turnaround. And I think I never really got to get too nervous or anything. I just got up on stage and I remember seeing so many friendly faces that I knew in the crowd. And I thought, you're going to be these docs one day. So you got to share what it's like, what it's like to be a student, how you got here, any sort of philosophy. And it just got me super excited for
That's awesome. That's
being a
awesome.
part of this profession.
And how was it? I can't remember. I apologize for not remembering this. Was that your first time attending?
Yeah.
So what
Yeah.
was your experience of attending Mile High?
It was all I thought it was going to be and more. I mean, when you're around principal docs and you can talk chiropractic, that just, like I was saying, like fills your cup and like lights your fire and gets you so excited because, especially as a student, you are in classes all day and you're learning the science stuff and the didactic stuff. And before you even get to the clinic part of it, you really get bogged down in that part. And so you need something to kind of fill your cup and get you excited, and remember that the reason you're here is to locate, analyze, and correct vertebral subluxation, and that can get lost and sometimes in the first year and a half. So for me, one of my biggest regrets is that I haven't been to Mile High before. I mean, I didn't go when I was in that, the deep trenches of the science classes, and I waited until I was more on the clinical side. But if I mean, I've told anyone who asked me how Mile High was and we saw you spoke, was like, why weren't you there? And why haven't you gone? And you need to get there, because that is how you get excited about your profession before you get that DC degree.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm glad to hear that, especially coming from a Sherman student. And let's talk about that. What's your, what would you, let's start with what, talks about Sherman, about student life. Just student life, obviously your experience is going to be at Sherman, but let's talk about your life as a student.
Yeah. Well, I started in COVID times. So my start to school was a little different than I think it
Right.
is now. So when I started, I was only on campus 3 days a week, and I did a lot of stuff online.
Yeah.
I was grateful that I was able to even come to campus at all, because a few quarters before me, they didn't have that. So people being involved was a little low when I first got there because of COVID times and the way that it all worked out. But, I didn't realize how great I had it at Sherman until you talk to people from other schools. And so you start off at school having, like I was saying, like those science classes, and that really gets you bogged down. So like I spent a lot of my time going to seminars on weekends to um, kind of get myself ready for the clinical side of things. And then then you move into the board exam part and you get all stressed out about that. And then you move into the clinical stuff, and, you know, then you finally get to see patients and do what you've been talking about doing for so long. Um, and now I'm kind of ending my time in that clinical side, and I'm getting close to graduation and moving on and becoming a doc. So, um, there's a lot of transitions throughout your time as a student, and that can be hard. Um, and it's been great to have the amazing faculty at Sherman, because they do a great job of, helping with those transitions and helping you out with all of that. But now the biggest transitions coming up for me of going out and being a doc. So it's been really great to have so many people on my side helping me get to that point, and especially at Sherman, I'm so lucky
Was
to
there
be there.
anything particular about your student experience that was a highlight, either a particular class or a particular instructor, or a couple of instructors that really made an impact on you?
Yeah. I think a lot along the way, a lot along the way. I have two that come to mind. I have Dr. Cindy Traharn. She teaches a lot of our classes kind of in that middle section of like the didactic period. And she she's very principled. And so it was nice to have like a female professor that was able to bring that kind of stuff into classes. That is a lot of diagnosis. And so, you know, talking about, you know, different principles and the numbers and things like that, it was super nice to have that from her. And then another one was Dr. 𝗔𝗹𝗶 when he became president towards my end of time at Sherman. Because, just to get to know him, and he just walking around campus and him knowing your name and coming up and saying hello and asking how you are and knowing things about you, that was, it brings a lot of like the family aspect into it. And I'm just was so lucky to have known him and to have had that experience.
Well, yeah, my son is going to be going to Sherman in just a few months here. He'll be starting school, and one of the things he said when he went to Sherman to visit was it felt like a family. That was what he told us, like I think word for word. And
Yeah.
he said you could tell it was all about, he'd visit other schools and he felt like, oh wow, you could really tell that the focus was chiropractic,
Yeah.
which is what, tilted him to go there. So
Yeah. And that was the same experience I had. I had gone to visit Sherman, and it was on the first on my list of schools to visit. And so when I had gone to visit there, I immediately got that family aspect. I have always gone to like smaller schools. And so having that smaller, like student to faculty ratio made a huge difference. The fact that walking around campus and through the halls, like all the professors know your name, they know things about you. And that can be a good or a bad thing. I mean, they keep you on track. They know, when they need to, give you a swift kick in the butt, like, hey, you gotta get it together, and um so yeah, it was great. I'm glad he had that experience. I'm excited that he'll be starting Sherman soon.
So, looking back at your philosophy classes, was there a particular moment that like was really a breakthrough philosophically for you?
I mean, I think day one, Dr. Decken, philosophy one, day one, I had been exposed to chiropractic philosophy a little bit, but not a ton. And so when he started talking about worldview, it really shifted my worldview because, I thought one thing about what chiropractic was going to be. Like I knew it was locate, analyze, correct vertebral subluxation, but knowing that it was more than just that and it was entire lifestyle really shifted my view. And then one of the first days of class, the principled sorority that I am now a part of came to our class and was sharing, we get philosophy classes early on in school, but then we start focusing on other things. And so you need to be the one who's kind of looking through the green books and like challenging yourself and learning the principles and learning how to educate your patients. That struck a chord with me too. I was like, wow, I need to be a part of an organization of people who are going to push me to be better in this aspect. And so I joined the sorority and we meet every single Thursday morning at 7 a.m. and we talk philosophy. So that definitely helped me along my way, even in, those times I was telling you, like the board exams and the tests and the midterms and all of those things. You need something to remind you why you're here. And so I was super lucky to have that through my entire time, because if I wouldn't, I don't know if I would have read the green books and pushed myself to practice how I was going to relay chiropractic to my patients.
Yep, yep. And so with that, you're in 12th quarter, so you're coming up on your PMOE, and you're doing that with two people that I really appreciate, Blaze and Alexis Varaday. I think highly of them and appreciate knowing them through school, and since graduating. So, and they come to Mile High, I think every year, if I remember right. And so now, what are your thoughts? I don't know this about you. Do you have a plan? Are you thinking of opening a practice? Are you thinking of being an associate? What direction are you doing? Then we'll talk about other students doing that.
Yeah. My plan as of now is to open up. I want to go to Knoxville, Tennessee and open up as soon as possible.
And what do you see with students leaning towards one or the other, being an associate or opening an office?
I think I see most students leaning towards associating for the first few years and then moving into opening an office. There are definitely those of us in my class specifically that are planning to open up right away, but a lot of people are looking to associate, just to get the business side of things and the patient side of things and become a better adjuster and things like that right outside of school.
Cool, cool. And with that, you talked about being in the sorority. You talked about, the value of having the camaraderie and getting some time of looking beyond what you learn at school. have you found, in addition to that, students do other things that would help them deepen their philosophical understanding?
Yeah, I think going to seminars, going to New Beginnings, Mile High, um, any of those
You've
types
seen
of seminars,
students.
I see a handful of students do that. Um, I think with us being at Sherman, there are a lot of people who get their philosophy in classes and then kind of stop, just like every other school. But I think there are some students who kind of have that itch to do a little bit more.
To dig deeper.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And so, because I heard you say a key word there, which is a handful. We'd like to see, and not just Sherman, but every school, more than a handful, dig a little deeper. Because look, you have to put in a lot of material due to accreditation, right?
Yep.
So I think that's common knowledge. And you can only get so much in the classroom hours. And then you have to go a little further, such as attending events or picking up a book.
Yep.
Which, when you're tired from school, it's, pick up another book is not always easy. There are people that stand down and put more energy into it as students, and then they do. I know now how much you reap a reward from that when you do that as a student. So, what would you encourage students to do? So, more students, not just, Sherman, but all over, to deepen their philosophical understanding.
I think the number one thing is to find principal docs that you're able to learn from. Because I think a lot of times the big gap is that they don't see themselves using these principles and the green books in their offices. And so when you see the way a principal doc does it, it'll show you how you can do it. So that would be my number one thing that I would suggest for people to do. And then, of course, go to the seminars, read the green books yourself, get involved with organizations on your campus that do these reading of green books and talking the principles and all of those things. And if you don't have that on your campus, start it. There
Mhm.
are both fraternities and sororities at different schools that do these things. And if you don't have one, it's a great thing for you to do and bring to your campus and bring to the students that are all going to come after you.
So now you mentioned about connecting with docs. Are there any particular docs that you really, I'm saying outside of Sherman instructors, are there any particular doctors, field doctors that, maybe inspired you or maybe you got to spend a little time with that helped you along the way?
I think for me, Dr. Robert Schiffman, the one who got me into school, he was a huge impactful person in my chiropractic journey. So he's the first one that pops into my head. A lot of the principal docs that I talk to now are the ones that are a little closer to my age. So the
Mhm.
ones that kind of were graduating, like doctors Alexis and Blaise Verde, who I'm going to PMOE with. They were two people that were able to help me through those hard times of, school, and they were graduating right when I was getting there. Um, of course, you know, you, I mean, come on, you put on an entire seminar. Like there are so many people out there that you can find and talk to. And you can tell pretty quickly from talking to a doc if they fall into that category for sure.
Cool, cool. Well, now books. Is there a particular green book or other chiropractic read that really impacted you?
Volume 14, and my favorite green book, because it is written in a way that even, as it says in the book, a layperson can read and understand chiropractic. And so I think my biggest suggestion to anyone starting chiropractic school would to read that book, because it breaks it down and it starts off super simple and it gets a little harder and a little harder, but it is one of those ones that, I think every chiropractic student should read cover to cover. Another book that Sherman gives us is The Triune of Life. So, not a green book, but it was one that I read early on, that helped me understand some things, I was confused about right at the beginning. And then I'm trying to think of other ones. A book that's not a green book, not a chiropractic book, is Start With Why by Simon Sinek. That
Yeah.
book is just the way he explains it, and he does this bullseye with 3 different circles.
Right.
So many things he says you can relate to chiropractic.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so I think when you read that book and you figure out your why and why having a why is important, that can really help you through school,
Yeah.
you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And now, on the reverse of all this, is there something you wish you would have looked at earlier or gotten exposed to during your school process that maybe you didn't or didn't do till later?
Yeah. For me, it was getting involved with the principal docs. That's
Uh-huh.
something I didn't do early on. I didn't. I kind of stuck to the students at school. I mean, of course, the professors we have at Sherman,
Right.
they do it in their classes every day. But sometimes when you're a student, you're sitting there like, are they doing this just because? Or, and so you don't see how it is when they're in practice. And so that would be probably my number one thing. Um, and then I think I was pretty involved. I got involved with a lot of, seminars of looking at different techniques or philosophy and things like that. But I would have done that even more.
Mm. That was one thing that when I was a student that frustrated me as a student, which is that, Sherman Lyceum was going on, and a good percentage of students say, "Oh, this is my weekend to go to the beach," or
Yep,
something like that.
absolutely.
And it would frustrate me because there were so many incredible doctors there, and I wanted to listen and help me learn more. And there were students that did that, and there were
Mhm.
students who were like, "Oh, this is my weekend to go home," or whatever it might be. And that frustrated me as a student, and it frustrates me now too. But I remember even there were students that would go to DE, students that would go. This is back when I was in school, and go to Lyceum and do all of those things. And you knew they walked differently, they talked differently, they understood things better. And I wish more doctors and students would do those things. Because look, you are going into practice, and when you're there, people they live in an allopathic world, and you have to be like the voice in this, in the forest, telling them something different, and that, needs you to be energized, and attending, reading, listening to podcasts, things like that will help you do that. And you have to do that and make that a habit as a student. I wish more students would do that. And I'm glad that you finally had a shift or a realization at that for yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think you make a great point with Lyceum. That does.
That still happens to some degree.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right. And it makes all the difference in the world. And I gotta tell you, doctors that listen, this is why I say, go to Sherman Lyceum, go to DE, go to New Beginnings, do whatever thing. There's other things like that. Obviously, I'm gonna say go to Mile High, but if you don't go to Mile High, go to things like along that vein, so you can grow as there's you'll gain one thing that someone says, either in an event, on stage, or even in a hallway, will be something that you'll always gain something. And sometimes it's not what you anticipate, but that will, something somebody says in the restaurant, you're like, man, that changed my life direction. And it doesn't have to be something on stage that you hear, but obviously you want to have quality program as well. But the being immersed in that makes all the difference in the world. I wish more doctors and students would understand that.
Yeah. And even, as a doc going to one of these seminars, if you're around a student and they're listening to you talk, you might say something that's impactful enough to change their projection as well. And doing that, I mean, think about all the people that student is going to eventually see one day, and something you might say might change all of that for them and all of their, future patients and practice
Right.
members.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So last thing here, Is there anything that advice that you'd like to share with students?
My biggest advice would be to get involved on your campus. I coming now to the end of my time at Sherman, I am happy with the amount that I was involved. You know, going to seminars, being involved in the sorority, talking philosophy, going to, spending a long weekend in a seminar instead of taking a break from your classes. Those are the important and impactful moments that when you are like finishing up and getting out and doing that transition of becoming a doc, those are going to be the times that make it all worth it.
Mhm.
And, I am personally just excited to get out into a community and start serving people. And my involvement on campus is going to help me tremendously. I already know.
Excellent, excellent. Now, this also might sound odd, but I want to ask you one more question, which is there any advice you would give doctors?
Get involved with students. We need you guys. We need to see what it's like out in practice. We need to see how being a principal doc actually works out for us. We need the advice. We need the help. You were in our shoes one day before, and now you're where we are excited to be. And so that would be my biggest thing, because the docs that were involved in my time here at school shaped me into the person I am and the doc I'm going to be, and are going to, like I said, help me help patients. And so, yeah.
Well, this last Mile High, we had $2,300 in travel money, if I remember correctly. That's roughly what it was, I think.
Yeah.
It was donated to student travel to get to Mile High. So that is inspiring to me. You need more things like that, because that's the students are the future of the chiropractic profession.
Absolutely.
And you need to invest in that. If we're going to have a future, we need to invest energy, whether it be financial or time, into students. In terms of advising them relative to school, advising them to get to things, helping them in practice, having them visit your office, having lunch with them. Just have lunch with a student.
Yeah.
You can say things or do things that will impact their future for sure. So, well, I want to thank you so much for actually having the courage to submit your entry for the speaker contest. Super exciting that you were there, and super exciting you got to enjoy. I hope you get back to Mile High. You can't, rather than be the person that speaks once and doesn't come back. So I'm hoping you come back and attend.
Oh, absolutely. I'm already registered.
Oh, are you? Well, there you go. I didn't even know that. So there you go. And this year it's not before finals or something. It's after that. So it'll be easier. And again, thank you for stepping on stage. Thank you for taking time to podcast. And everybody, remember, hit subscribe. Make sure you are listening, watching more Mile High Tick each week. And of course, make sure you just pull the trigger and rise up to mile high altitude in September. And keep changing spines, lives, and minds with chiropractic.